Good morning, and welcome to the Brazilian American Chamber's seminar on conserving the Amazon, leveraging people and reducing poverty, in collaboration with our new member, the FAS Foundation for Amazon Sustainability, or FAS. I'm John Welch, the Executive Director of the Brazilian American Chamber, and it's really great to see all of you.
It's my pleasure to spend the morning thinking about the Amazon with new faces and also seeing some familiar and friendly faces. Well, first of all, let me say that the Amazon is more than plants and animals and carbon and water. It's with people. So I think we have to put a human face to the Amazon. That's why the presentation is talking about people. But basically what you see here is the flow of life, because life depends on water, basically. That's the essence. We're 2/3. Our body is 2/3 water, and the planet's also 2/3 water. So the flow of water is essential to life. That's what these expeditions to other planets look for water. Right? So water is essential. And this flow of water is directly connected to the Amazon. The Amazon plays a very important role as a major pump of water, to put it in very simple terms. So this global circulation is affected by a number of factors, but the Amazon plays an important role in that. The Amazon stores a lot of carbon. I was talking to Raquel earlier, so it's about 3 times the global emissions annually that we have in the form of plants and life in the Amazon. We have the highest diversity of indigenous peoples in the world. We have about over 300 distinct cultures that speak different languages, and completely different languages, more different than French and Portuguese, to put it in comparison, that have a wealth of knowledge, which is fantastic. They know about plagues, they both know about drugs, in a way that scientists don't know. So it's a very, very rich asset that the Amazon has. It also has a huge amount of water. About 16% of total surface fresh water in the world is from the Amazon River. So Brazil had a peak of deforestation in 2004, and then it reduced all the way to 2012 here, and then it started going up, and now it has increased very significantly over the past few years. So the big numbers is 27, went down to 4, and now it's 13. This is the satellite data, which is an underestimate because it doesn't pick up forest degradation that results from unsustainable logging and forest fires. This is 1900, early 1900. The warmer it is, the closer to brownish is warmer. The closer to blue is cooler than the average. So what we are seeing now, it's something very tangible. It's the global warming. The temperature is rising, the Arctic is melting, the droughts in California are becoming more severe, and so on and so forth, right? So as this happens, the Amazon becomes not only a source of the problem, because deforestation becomes emissions, but also a victim. So the Amazon is also suffering from the global climate change that results from emissions in the US. So the US, in a way, not only the US, Europe and China and so on, they affect the Amazon because global warming increases temperature, and the increase of temperature increases the likelihood of forest fires, and that it becomes a sort of a snowball effect. These here in the outer part are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and they land in 8 priority areas. And this is a result of over 1,000 workshops that we have carried out at the community level. And that's education, community infrastructure, income, empowerment, innovation, environmental conservation, management, transparency, and health. And at the core is education and bioeconomy. So that's our approach, is to take care of everything, which is a huge challenge. But the finding that we have is that when one gets to a community, it's essential to get their participation. And to get their participation, we have to do whatever is more important to them, not to us. Usually, institutions come from outside with a program. Oh, I have a program on fish farming, I have a program on forest management, blah, blah, blah. And impose that to the community. But we do the opposite, bottom up. What's a priority to you? Oh, it is sexual abuse of girls. Okay, we work with that. It's electricity, solar energy, or it's education, or it's health, or whatever, drinking water. So we work with everything, which is very, very challenging. But our approach is to do that with a network, with an ecosystem of partners. So we have about 300 partners. So for example, for health program, we have a partnership with the medical school. So the medical school with an internet connection provides us training and support for telemedicine in the long distance. So we don't have a medical doctor, but we have a health program. Likewise, we have a very strong solar energy program. We don't have an electrical engineer in our staff. But we do have a partnership with Unicoba, which is the best company that produces lithium battery in Manaus. So they do the design for us, the engineers of the company. So that's our strategy to be able to deal with this very complex reality. Our education program is focused on providing teenagers opportunities for them to stay in the villages rather than migrating to towns, which is a major trend throughout Latin America, and it's terrible because they lose the brains. The best brains migrate to urban areas. So we provide high school up to technical school and now university level in the middle of the forest. So we have built 9 of these small universities in the middle of the forest. These are some results. This is deforestation rate. This was the beginning of FAS in 2008. We have about 43% reduction of deforestation. This was last year's data. So in the areas where we work in 11 million hectares. It's a huge part of land, piece of land. Deforestation rate went down 55%. In comparable areas, it went up 28%. So the message is that it works. And in terms of poverty, in 2009, it was this, and now it's here. In 2019, not now, 2019, we're going to have next year another survey. We do that every 4 years. And this is the dotted line, is the poverty line, the extreme poverty line of the World Bank. So basically we're moving above the extreme poverty line. Actually, we have a program focused on community-based tourism. It's our entrepreneurship program. We have 15 enterprises in the Negro River and 13 enterprises in the Guatumã River that we support. They're doing extremely well. In Guatumã, they're going to make something like $1 million this year. These are 13 community-based enterprises, 5 million reais. And about the same amount in the lower Rio Negro. And what we do is capacity building for gastronomy, for financial management, business management, all kinds of things that are essential. It's not an easy transition from being a logger into being owner of a lodge. Right? It becomes a service provider. It's a psychological change. Don't underestimate that change, but it's doable.
I have a question because obviously you're talking about, you're just talking about the garimperos and people that turn towards, let's say illegal activity that, obviously you want to discourage because there is a lack of economic development. So a lot of people might not be aware of this. I only learned this a couple months ago myself. That, like in Manaus, for example, a lot of automakers have motorcycle factories that Yamaha, there's some others that they manufacture. Yeah, the motorcycles in Brazil, they export it to neighboring countries. So I'm kind of curious about your take from working in that region. I've never been there personally. On the industrialization, on maybe striking, that balance, because yes, you want some industrialization to generate jobs, but maybe you don't want too much. It's kind of like a catch-22. So I'm curious to get your take on what the right balance might be.
Oh, it's a very good question. Manaus has an industrial zone with about $30 billion a year of gross output. It employs about 100,000 people, that indirect employment, and about 500,000 in indirect employment. And that's very, very important for the future of the Amazon, because it generates a lot of taxes, and these taxes allow for government to implement social programs. It also diverts economic activities away from deforestation into services. So the most important economic activities are services, commerce and health and education services. So it's very, very important. So in order to save the Amazon, we have to save the Manaus Free Trade Zone, which produces almost all the motorcycles of Brazil, almost all the bicycles of Brazil, cell phones and computers and other high-tech products that are very, very important. So there's a debate in Brazil right now, because there's this discussion about changing the tax structure and reducing taxes. And Manaus Free Trade Zone works as an industrial zone. It's not an area just of maquiladora, as they say in Mexico. No? You have a whole supply chain. For example, motorcycles, there are dozens of parts manufacturers for motorcycles based in Manaus. So there's a whole value chain based in Manaus that took a long time to be structured. So saving that industrial zone is very important. Sometimes this is not very well understood from southern Brazil. There's a sort of a dispute between São Paulo and Manaus. But in addition to this, to the industrial zone, if you well, let me give it back to you. What else? What does it require?
I totally understand what you're saying. I guess I guess what I'm trying to ask is, so you're just saying right now that free trade zone needs to be saved. But let's say, for example, and I'm assuming that people of Manaus, you would know better than me, are in favor of the free trade zone. But I mean, let's say it got to the point where more companies came in and invested, and all of a sudden you have a trade zone that's twice the size or 3 times the size. Then you start talking about whatever negative externalities, as they would say in economics, come from that manufacturing. So I guess I was kind of curious, again, from your standpoint, what a good balance would be. Because again, you want more, but how much? I don't know if you've even dedicated too much thought to this.
The right balance? Yeah, I think it's a good question. Probably the answer is no one knows what's the right balance. But I think the balance has to factor in protecting the existing industries and expanding them. the ecological footprint of a job in Manaus, in industrial zone, is smaller than the ecological footprint of cattle farming. So to generate the same dollar through cattle farming, it has a higher ecological footprint or greater ecological footprint than in industrial zone. So that's a big picture. So in a way, it's from an ecological standpoint better than cattle farming. Cattle farming has a very heavy footprint. So the balance is how much cattle, how much industry, and how much bioeconomy. Bioeconomy is the products coming from the forest, like the pirarucu fish, or Brazil nuts, and other things, that we can add more value. Because right now what we do is we export basically raw material, raw acai. Acai is fantastic, it's a huge commodity that can become, in my view, more important than orange for Brazilian export, because it's a fantastic product. But we export basically raw acai, but we could export pills already, rather than acai. You can buy acai in New York in a store in pills, right? But these pills are processed somewhere else, not in the Amazon.
At the beginning of your presentation, you were saying that the deforestation problem is so complex that it's not as easy as putting just policemen all over the place. So I was wondering if you could expand a little more regarding solutions, but also as someone who's worked for the government, what is the role of the state and the federal government in reducing deforestation in the Amazon?
Very good question. It would take a long time to answer completely, but just a short answer is governments play a very important role. And one has to consider the fact that in the case of Brazil, we have 3 levels of government, federal, state, and municipal, and they all play a role. Oftentimes, people just look at the federal government, but the state governments have a very, very significant role. In terms of environmental licensing, for example, they play a very important role. Less so the municipal governments. So I would say that state governments play a very important role. Finally, I think that the role of the federal government is one that it's really key in terms of the narrative. And right now we see a narrative which is in favor of gold mining and in favor of garimpo, in favor of illegal logging, which is not good. So that change in narrative is necessary. I think we really have an issue with the discourse. It's something that may seem too intangible, but it makes a really difference. So when we were in government, for example, we had a campaign which was in the outdoors for Saúde more standing and cut across the state. So having campaigns and having a narrative in favor of forests is essential. So right now we have a narrative that is not in favor of protecting the forest, which gives sort of a sense of a green light for those that destroy the forest.
What is the role of the companies and the corporate organizations in order to help the Amazon, and how do the American companies that work down in Brazil can be helpful, and how does that connect to their ESG programs and investments?
Well, I think the private sector plays a very important role in the climate change equation. I think it's essential. We're not going to be able to win the climate change emergency challenges without the private sector. The private sector will play a very important role. I think the private sector is waking up. My sense from Glasgow, the last COP meeting, is that the private sector is very outspoken and is making very significant commitments. The leaders, the sort of the top of the pyramid, are fully aware The challenge is to go to the less educated business leaders. And here we have an interesting partnership with Fundação Dom Cabral, that is a leading Brazilian business school that educates about 25,000 executives per year. It's the largest business school of Brazil. And the challenge, the goal of this partnership is to educate business leaders on climate change and what they can do. Because it's an issue of education. They go to business schools and they don't learn about this. They just know about accounting and finance and so on, but are basically ignorant about climate change. And my vision, my message is, it's not acceptable for a business leader to be ignorant about climate change. He has to be educated. It's not only a moral responsibility, as Pope Francis would say, but it's also a business strategy. You have to have ESG that is robust, that is not subject to greenwashing criticism, that is really solid. So I think the most sophisticated companies are already moving, but they need to move more. They need to do much more. And I think the message is getting there. The generation of jobs has to be seen from the systemic approach. So if you don't have drinking water, solar energy and so on, you don't generate sustainable prosperity. So I think what you're looking for, and myself as well, is prosperity. So prosperity has to include many things other than simply income. But in order to invest, to increase income, what we have done in our track record, we have invested about 350 million reais over the course of 15 years. So that's about an average of 20 million reais. And we reached 40,000 individuals, and we tripled the income of these families. I'm doing exactly this calculation now. What would cost to do the full package of what we have developed in terms of solutions for the whole Amazon? And the number, I think it's going to be around 10 to 20 billion dollars a year for the whole Amazon. And as I mentioned before, I think it's not a big number. It sounds like a big number, but if you look at the Green Climate Fund that ITB, for example, the American Development Bank is implementing, it's $100 billion a year. I think 10% of that going to the Amazon for 10 years would make a huge difference. So it's in that order of magnitude, tens of billions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Virgilio, for a fantastic discussion. And thank you, Ricardo and Christina, for bringing all of you along. So,
Thank you.
Well, and as you mentioned, there's a bunch of events this week. The UN has its Global Pact event this weekend for Brazil, and then we have the Brazil Environment Summit at Colombia on Thursday and Friday. So, and our next event is next Tuesday on healthcare. So I won't go in. I've already taken much of your time. Thank you all for coming. Thank you again. Stay safe and healthy.